I spent years living in fear. Fear of not being good enough, fear of not being worthy of love, fear of not being able to find a job, fear of not belonging. And that fear led me into a turbulent relationship, which I now know I was not matched for. And that fear did not just affect me, it impacted my daughter too. And that became my wake-up call. This is really deep. So in this video, I want to share the 3 biggest self-worth habits that keep women leaders unfulfilled, and more importantly, what you can do to break free from them. Let's start with the very first one. The first habit is avoiding your fears. For years, I ignored my blind spots. I ignored to feel my fears. I ignored to pause, be curious about my fears. I even considered personal growth as a weakness, because society doesn't value or celebrate people who work on themselves. But here's the truth. Every fear you avoid keeps you stuck. This is so deep for me. I knew it was going to be a deep video, but it's really deep for me. And here's the liberation. When you finally face fear of rejection, fear of being alone, fear of not being loved, fear of not finding your job, fear of not being liked, that's when you start taking back your power, because there's a very few ultimate truths. And when we understand that, that's when we reclaim our power, and that's when you start to be a captain in your life. And I came to the point of no return. I came to the realization that I could not afford not to change, because staying the same was costing me way more than change would ever do. So if your life is not what you want it to be, don't wait for the outer world to change. You get to upgrade yourself. You get to upgrade your paradigms, what you think, your thoughts, your belief systems, your actions, who you surround yourself with, and begin to surround yourself with dream uplifters. Let's go to the second habit. The second habit is neglecting your self-worth. When you don't value yourself, when you don't love yourself, you accept, this is so deep. This is so deep. You accept relationships, you accept jobs, you accept environments that don't value you either. And you accept dream stealers. All this to say, when you neglect your self-worth, you vibrate on a lower level frequency. And I vibrated on lower level of frequencies. I didn't get what I wanted. I got who I was. And I stayed in situations that drained me. And I did not know how to get unstuck. Until one day, I saw a comment on LinkedIn. And I just knew deep within, it was time to change my world. Because at that time, I had stopped dreaming and I had started to lower my expectation for life. I started to blindly accept what everyone else around me would say without even questioning their values, their beliefs. Why should I borrow their beliefs? Why should I borrow their values? But I borrowed their values and I borrowed their beliefs without questioning. And their beliefs, their values, their fears became my values, my belief systems, and my fears. This is so deep and vulnerable at the same time. I had retired my critical thinker, and that created turbulence within me because I compromised on my soul's calling and started to settle for less, but I knew deep within, this is not what I wanted to experience. But when I started on my personal development journey, understanding what neuroscience is, understanding frequencies, energies, that every word carries energy, every thought carries an energy, and it leads to an outcome. I started to also protect my self-worth. I started to build on my self-love. Because if I don't love myself, how can I expect other people to love myself? And if I'm not proud of the value that I create, how can I ever expect anyone else to value that I bring. I started to rewire my relationship with myself, and I started for the first time to be proud of who I was. And here's what I want you to know. When you blindly accept what everyone else is saying, you have retired your critical thinker. And what happens is that you start to borrow everyone else's beliefs, everyone else's habits, and everyone else's fears. And I see that self-sabotaging habit so often in high-performing women. That creates turbulence within, because you are going against your soul. You're going against what you truly want. And suddenly the ego starts to take over. And when the ego starts to take over, then you're wanting to figure it out. You want to be someone for everyone else, and you're putting yourself last. And that creates friction, and it leads to mental health challenges. But what I've seen in so many women, and what I experienced myself, the moment you start to invest in yourself, the moment you say, I am worthy enough to own my values, I'm worthy enough to find out what I truly believe to be true, I'm worthy enough to have healthy boundaries for myself, what happens is that you stop chasing approval and you start making decisions from a place of self-love that actually honor who you are and what you bring to the world. When you do that, your entire life begins to shift. The third thing I want you to stop doing is to ignore your intuition. Your intuition knows really well what's next for you. If I had listened to my intuition, I wouldn't have ended up in that relationship. But I'm so blessed because I got my lovely daughter. I would never have started my personal development journey, and I would never been able to share with you my journey. Circling back to intuition, oftentimes we disconnect ourselves from our heart. We disconnect ourselves from our emotions. And what happens is that we stay in our head. We stay in our ego mind. We want to figure everything out. But here's what I want you to know, is that you cannot figure out your future. If you try, if you believe you can figure out your future, then you're replicating the past. But the only way to create your future is to create it. You cannot figure it out. And where do you create? You create from heart. Within your heart lies your intuition. I want you to understand how important it is to listen to your intuition. The more you trust your intuition, the more you walk with certainty, the faster you get to where you want to be. And remember, you don't manifest a thing, you manifest that next version of you. Now it's your turn to do that inner work. So when you do that, you start to leave your body. You start to live from a place of authenticity and with a strong desire to connect. People connect with people they can feel. People feel the energy. So it starts showing up as who you truly are. And it may be scary at first. I know that's what it's so liberating. And when you come from that place, you start to inspire other people to trust themselves more, and you start to create bigger results that you've only been dreaming of. Circling back to where I started with family. As I started to heal, my daughter began to heal as well. And the deeper I go in my personal development, the deeper I build a relationship with myself, and the more consistently I show up on a higher and a better frequency, the happier and more relaxed my daughter is. So my question to you is, who will benefit when you put yourself first? What will you mirror when you start setting up healthy boundaries for yourself? So those were the 3 self-worth habits that keep women leaders unfulfilled. If there's one thing you take away from this video, let it be this: your healing doesn't just change you. It ripples into everyone. I had to change because my daughter's future depended on it, and maybe yours does too. Thank you for watching. I love you, And if this video spoke to you, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share, so more women leaders can step into their worth and lead with power, and lead with authentic power.